Disclaimer: the content provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. While we discuss topics related to mental health advice, life wisdom, and the like, the opinions expressed are personal views of the hosts and do not constitute professional, legal, or medical advice. We make no representations or warranties about the accuracy or completeness of the information discussed. Any action you take based on the information in this podcast is strictly at your own risk, and we are not liable for any losses or damages in connection with its use. Additionally, this podcast may contain discussions around addictions, substances, which are intended for adult audiences. We do not endorse any illegal activities. Please consult your local laws before engaging in any actions related to this content. By listening to this podcast, you agree that you are over the age of 18 or the age of majority in your jurisdiction and understand the terms of this disclaimer.
Welcome to the Balancing Forces podcast, where two opposites collide in the best way possible. One brings the fire,
the other keeps it chill.
But together we share life's lessons, hard-earned wisdom,
advice you can actually use.
Whether you need a fresh perspective or just a laugh, we're here to elevate your mind. So buckle up, because things are about to get real and
really funny.
Are you ready to level up your astrology game? Join the Alchemist Laboratory by Solar Systems. For just $33 a month, you get access to 10 plus courses, a resource library, manifestation secrets, live Q&As, and so much more. Over $2,300 in value. Transform your understanding of astrology and unlock hidden knowledge. Sign up now through the school app and follow Solar Systems on TikTok and Instagram. Chapter 26. The truth is obvious. I get a great many clients coming to see me who are stuck career-wise. Either they're in a job or career that they have no passion for, or perhaps they're between careers, taking some time off, or just uncertain what to do next. Often, there is joy and stability in other areas of life, such as relationships and finances. But there is a great unease in the whole area of their life's work. Often they long for more, long for less, or long for different, but they just can't put their finger on what it is. They just can't get past themselves. There is something they just can't see, and it is blocking their path. Of course, I go deep into the usual work with their autobiography, which I require from all clients, and explaining the love cup, core beliefs, 3 binary gates, and identifying the true power sources and negative energy sources in their life and in their core beliefs. For each aspect of life influences the others. I help them see how these very powerful negative influences have been pressed into the cement of their soul and have been steering them well off the course for decades. Very quickly after seeing the massive influence of these other voices and desiring to finally be free, clients commence the words and actions necessary for full life ownership. Nonetheless, the problem often persists of being unable to pinpointedly identify what it is missing in their career or what direction they want to go next. Identifying and removing obstacles, usually inside in their self-belief system, is only half the problem. Without a vision, there is no place to go, no matter how efficiently the machine may be running now. But the added benefit of removing negative energy sources and negative beliefs is that the client now allows themselves to think about what they really love without fear of backlash, criticism, or questions and doubts from others, past or present, that undermine dreams. In other words, they finally have a safe space to allow the real me to come up and out without being hurt or put down. In the past, they've not wanted to admit or even look at what their truth or dream is, because the price of speaking that dream or acting on that vision meant showing it to others who might put it down or hurt them. But now, with those negative energy sources radically deflated of their power to control and oppress the dreams of the individual, real truth can come up and out. And do you know what I find? For as much as they stew, worry, and wrangle over what may or may not be next, no matter how much hand-wringing is frustrating them trying to figure it all out, no matter how foggy or terrifically unclear they feel about what to do with life, and no matter how hard they've already been searching, invariably, the truth is obvious. Zen proverb. More often than not, the real dream and passion for my client's life is right in front of his or her face. It is generally something they've always known or dreamed about. They've been denying or avoiding it so long or making excuses, out of fear, for why it couldn't work, but they've lost their ability to see it. Yet it is often so clear and so easy to see that the transition into it and pursuing it is almost effortless. Who you really are and what you are called to pursue, i.e., that which makes your heart sing, is not out there somewhere. The real path that calls to your heart rises up from within. It is not found, it is allowed, and it is usually right in front of you, just as it has always been. Once it is seen for the obvious truth that it is and how perfectly it fits with who you are, clarity follows. And the clarity is a mighty powerful thing. Clarity brings motivation. Clarity brings strength. Clarity brings inner calm. Clarity brings massive energy in its wake. But there can be no clarity without the courage to remove all of the negative energy blocking its flow up from deep within you. And that's the dirty work, the really hard, challenging, scary work. Yet, what is true regarding your vocational calling is true regarding the calling of your soul in relationships, parenting, avocations, and more. The truth is obvious. Giving words to it is the challenge. The power of when. For the naturally curious soul, this notion of obvious truth raises the simple questions. Why now? It's a question I regularly hear from clients and audiences. If the truth is and always has been so obvious, why am I only seeing it or getting it now? And this brings us to one of the more ticklish aspects of the spiritual journey, the power of when. I have found on my own spiritual path and in the patterns I've seen in the past of others that the most revealing question is often not where, what, how, or even why, though why is usually the king of the hill of the badass counseling method. The power question is when. Why now? When is so revealing, often a backdoor to why. Think about some of the great when moments of history and life. Politics. Apart from identity of Deep Throat, the two biggest questions of the entire Nixon Watergate scandal, and the phrase most closely related to the scandal ever since, were uttered by Senator Howard Baker. What did President Nixon know, and when did he know it? Religion. My pastor father, who has majored in ancient Greek in college and studied Koine Biblical Greek in seminary, taught me a full decade before I too would study both ancient Greek and Koine Greek for my college and graduate studies. A very fascinating one question, one that impacts billions of people over the last 2 millennia. Mind you, I'm 10 or so years old, and my old man is giving me a lesson in Greek etymology and the difficulty of interpreting text from one language or two, particularly an ancient one or two, to one's own language. But it was so interesting that it stuck. Remember, he chided, in biblical Greek, there was no punctuation. So, in reading and interpreting the text in their original language, meanings are not as clear as many a preacher liked to make them. Consider when Jesus is on the cross with a robber hanging on a cross on either side of him. One of them asked for Jesus' mercy, and Jesus then proclaims, "Truly, I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise." Now, Sven, where do you put the comma in that sentence? Remember, there's no punctuation in the text, so the interpreter has to insert it. So do you place it before the word today or after it? If you place the comma before today, truly, I tell you, comma, today you will be with me in paradise. The proclamation carries the meaning that the robber will be with Jesus in paradise today, as if to say, let's get on with dying so you and I can get the heck out of here and go to heaven. But if you place that non existent comma after today, the whole meaning changes. Truly, I tell you today, comma, you will be with me in paradise. Rather than you and I are going to be in heaven today, buddy, the meaning is much less exciting. I'm telling you right now today, pal, that you will be with me in paradise someday, whenever it is that paradise actually happens. The placement of the mere comma, Sven, determines something as monumental as when heaven happens. On the surface, this may sound like a trivial point, but it's not, for it raises the rather grave, far reaching question of not where is heaven or how do I get in, as most Sunday schools and even adults spend much time worrying about, but when does heaven happen? For by putting in the comma before today, it implies that the robber gets to go to heaven immediately upon death. Yet, nearly the whole corpus of Christian theology states that there is some grand and glorious judgment day in the future when it will be parsed out who goes up and who goes down. The entire Christian biblical book of Revelation is about how the end times will come and how the potential ascent to heaven and paradise will follow. How is that a theological point? Eschatology reconciled with Jesus' possible proclamation that heaven happens immediately after death. Most Christian theology asserts that heaven happens later, after the judgment day, but quite ironically, most biblical translations put the comma before today, implying that both Jesus and the robber, who was not divine and thus have a backdoor to heaven, would be entering the pearly gates that day. The obvious present day ramifications are such that What does a pastor tell a couple who's lost a child? Do they say your child is in heaven or your child will be in heaven someday? Or, even more difficult, what does the pastor or a well meaning relative say to a child whose father or mother died? Mommy is in heaven right now, or mommy will be in heaven someday? Sports. The question of when is one of the most central. Every timed sports record is answering the question of when. In football, nearly every game is marked by the questions: when did his knee touch the ground? Music. When is perhaps the most important element of music. Tempo, rhythm, timing of entrances alone is huge. One little known fact is that many orchestras actually start playing after the conductor's downbeat or instruction to start playing is called playing behind the beat. The orchestra, rather than the conductor, is actually controlling its own timing, its own when. By waiting a tick before hitting their first note and subsequently staying a tick or a half tick behind the conductor for the entire piece, an orchestra can interpret the speed, style, and arc of what a conductor is seeking to accomplish. It really is quite similar to that hundredth of a second that the batter in a professional baseball has to interpret what is happening in the pitcher's windup and release, as well as what kind of ball is coming out of his hand. This enables them to increase their ability to express the sound. When is an incredibly powerful question. And so when I feel it is the most salient question to ask in counseling, I'll simply lay it before the client and let him or her tinker with it a bit. It's so fascinating that this specific even happened right now in your life. So why now and not 2 years ago or 2 months from now? Or, for example, my question is not why did your wife cheat on you 8 years ago, but why not 12 years ago or 4 years ago? What was going on in your lives then? Why then? Furthermore, if she is cheating at 8 years ago, it's reasonable to assume that she was feeling ever increasing discontent 9, 10, perhaps 12 years ago. In other words, your marital problems didn't start at the time of the infidelity, but long before. So when did the problems really start? The answer to the question gives birth to the question and answer I'm really hunting for. So, if the problem really started long before the infidelity, what really triggered the problems in your marriage? All of a sudden, the client is looking for answers in places they never realized there was a problem. Changing the when changes the problem and thereby changes the solution set. Whether regarding cheating or a major life catastrophe or particular decisions that impacted many or powerfully impacted a few, here are the responses that tend to repeat themselves when people are confronted with the when question. I wasn't ready before I was to blank, or I was not enough blank. I needed this event now more than ever to jolt me out of my comfort zone. That big thing happened in our relationship at that time because things had been built up for some time, and then this one other thing happened, and it all went south from there. I hadn't even linked those two things together before, but yeah, things had been bad for a while, not overnight. I just had so much fear from my past before, but not now. I was trying to please everyone before. I was too afraid to say and or show what I really wanted. I've grown. I'm finally ready to hear it and grasp it. There is something incredibly liberating and empowering for my clients when they realized it had to be now, not months later or years later, or when they realize why a particular event, such as cheating, happened precisely when it did. There was no other perfect time. The timing tells the real story. And this gets to one of the most critical elements of the spiritual journey, whether you're avowed atheist, rapidly religious, or more likely somewhere in between. It is the notion of communion with and trust in the spirit of the universe. Recognizing the voice of the universe speaks to us from within and is indistinguishable from our own deepest soul voice. To have a true communion means to trust the answers will come when the time is right. The when is always perfect. The truth is not only obvious, but it's almost always available now. The only thing blocking you from knowing it is your anxiety, your fear, and the fact that you're looking in the wrong place. There's the old saying, infinite patience yields immediate results, and that has a nice ring to it. It sounds clever, but it's like some doggone cone when you try to unpack it and figure out what the heck it actually means. By committing to infinite patience on a particular issue, i.e., by letting go of needing to know right now, the anxiety drops away. And once anxiety is gone, as well as the fear that is always the precursor to anxiety, the answer unfolds and reveals itself. And yes, that can be immediate. I'm not lying. I'm not just making this beep up just to sound all clever and spiritual. It's true. Once you have the capacity to relax your mind and let go of results and the fear that drives the need for particular results, you will have nearly instant clarity. That's why meditation, journaling, and the Sedona method mentioned earlier, and even therapy, at least with an excellent therapist, have such power. They release the anxiety and the fear that are blocking your seeing the obvious truth. One more thought on when in religion and spirituality. Every preacher has, at one time or another, preached on difference in Greek between kairos and chronos. Chronos is linear time, watches, clocks, your 4 p.m. doctor's appointment on Thursday. Kairos is known as God's time, in due time, when God is ready, always a much more circular and unpredictable time. And here's the real kicker you ain't going to get in church. Kairos ain't about patience, it's about now. See, most clergy, when preaching on the notion of trust in God's time, exhort people to be patient, trusting that your calling will come when it's time for it to come. But I don't believe that there is ever a time when God, universe, soul isn't speaking and speaking to your next calling. If we're truly in tune with intuition, the speaking of our own body and skin, and the voice of the soul, it is always telling us what is next, specifically what is now. It may be a big message or big calling, or it may be a medium or small calling, but what's next is always being conveyed right now, even if it's a message calling you down into your deepest self. And the Kairos is not only an issue of size of the calling. Often we want to know what to do in our next career life, but our soul or God and universe gives us a tiny calling in, let's say, our fitness life, seemingly completely unrelated, or perhaps in our family life, and in the end, it always weaves together. Or perhaps you're desiring a calling or clarity in your relationship, but God gives you a giant calling in your financial life that completely resets the table of your life. All aspects of life play together, each dependent upon the other, all in concert. But most folk have no interest in the small and the medium callings. They so have in their hearts set on some big calling they want in a particular area. It may be a specific calling, or it may be that they simply are not satisfied with anything other than something big. So they reject the callings they are getting because they want something better or different. In other words, the problem isn't that God isn't talking. The problem is that you ain't listening. Or worse, you're rejecting the call because your plans are, it appears, bigger or better than God's plan for you or your life. Or, more often than not, the calling or the obvious truth you are being called to is right in front of your face, but you don't want it because the price is too high. The fear is too great, and that fear is often what keeps us second guessing the calling, hoping for something different. So you keep asking God to speak and show you what's next, when God's speaking ain't the problem. Execution is the problem because you're just scared. So don't try to make this God's problem or some Kairos thing. If it doesn't scare the holy hell out of you, it's not God's calling for your life. If it is safe and comfortable or easy, it's not God's call. Fact. Sven Erlandson. And therein is the flaw. We only truly find our greatest purpose and joy when we let go of trying to control the results, when we trust the spirit of the universe. Trust it speaking through intuition, and trust that it knows, our own deepest soul knows better than we do. And once that churn happens, everything changes. Everything. When we are truly in tune with the voice of the universe, moment to moment, rising up from within, we discover that what vexes us isn't the frustration of moving too slow, but the fear that comes from everything moving seemingly too fast. When we complain that God is not speaking the real underlying problem, it's that God is usually already shouting. But you're terrified of the price of what you're being asked to do, or terrified by the sheer velocity of change that it will bring. When we are truly in tune, no longer afraid, and fully trusting the calling of the soul, life is this exciting roller coaster of an adventure and constant new tasks and endeavors. And even the medium and small callings are loaded with excitement, risk, challenge, and enthusiasm. The truth is always obvious and always available right now.
How awesome is this? This is going to be the book we're going to be giving away. It is an autographed copy as well. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, share this out with your friends. At the end of the series, there will be a giveaway for a copy of your own book. Thank you.